At this point, our license plate should look like this. We want it to look like this. So in order to do that, we'll open the file up in Photoshop. And in Photoshop, we're going to save it out as a PNG. We'll go to File, Save As. I'll choose the format PNG below. And I'll give it a name. And once I save it, I'll open it up. This is my PNG with a single layer. And the first thing we want to do is add some noise to this. Going to Filter and going to Noise, Add Noise. I've set the noise amount to 3. I'll click OK. And now I'm going to get my magic wand tool by hitting W. I'm setting the tolerance at the top to 5. And I'll click anywhere on the orange. Right-clicking, holding my mouse. I can go down to Similar, and you should see marching ants like this. I'm going to copy and paste it to its own layer by going to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste. And if we were to take a look at the layer, we'd see something like this. Now on that layer, we're going to start to add some filters. We'll start by putting a layer style on at the bottom of the layer window by going to FX and choosing Bevel and Emboss. And in Bevel and Emboss, I'm going to make the depth about 850. I've made the size about 160, and I've made sure that it's set for inner bevel. Now I'm going to put an inner glow on it. I'll click on Inner Glow. I'm going to use the Blend Mode Multiply. I'll set the opacity for the moment to 100%, and then I'm going to choose a color. I'll click below the word Noise on the little color picker square, and I've chosen kind of a brown. If you want to use the same color, you could put in your red at 86, your green at 52, and the blue at 9. I'll hit OK, and the first thing I'm going to do is back off on the opacity. I'm making the opacity about 50, and then I'll go down to the size, and I'll make the size about 25. This gets subjective depending on how gnarly and old you want the plate to look like. And I'll click OK. Now we're going to add some other effects to it, but in order to do that, we want to merge those two layers together. I'll Shift Select, and I'll go to the upper right hand corner of the layer window where the white lines are, and I'll click and choose Merge Layers down at the bottom. I'll start by adding a new layer, and now we're going to use that layer to create these creases that we see. I'll hit L on the keyboard, and I'm going to use the Polygon Lasso tool. The Polygon Lasso tool allows us to click and let go, and you'll see that when you move your cursor, it's followed by a rubber band line. I'm making a bit of a diagonal through the plate randomly here, and I'm going around the outside perimeter clicking until I get back to where I began. When you get back to your beginning, and you get close to where you started, you'll see a little circle in the lower right hand corner of the tool. And when you click on it, it closes the selection out. Now we're going to use kind of a rusty brown to make that crease. Going to my swatches, I'll go down to the bottom of the swatch window, and I'm looking for the pale colors. You'll see that in the pale file, there are all browns. I'll get the darkest sienna that I can click at the very end, and I'll get my brush. I'm going to set my brush hardness to about 25, and I'm going to set the opacity at the top of the user interface to about 50. And now I'll put my brush well outside the selection, just barely crossing into it, and then I'll start to paint through. And if I hide the selection, you can see what we're looking at. Now I'm going to need something like that on the other side with a little bit of a line through it. So with my selection, I'll hit M on the keyboard, and I'll just move it to the left a little bit. Now if I were to continue to paint, I would fill in that space, but I want on the outside of that selection now. So I'll go to Select, Inverse, I'll hit B to get my brush, and I'll paint a little bit on that side as well. I'll deselect, and I'm going to go to my layers now, and I'm going to choose the Blend Mode Multiply. And it's a little too dark, so I'll play with the opacity. I'm dropping my opacity maybe to 70%. Now let's go and put another crease on this side. I'll hit L on the keyboard once again, and I'll make a selection I might want. I'll get my brush, and maybe I'll reduce the size of it, and I'll paint just inside the selection there as well. I'll choose Select Inverse at the top. I'll move the selection a little bit, hitting M on the keyboard to get the selection tool. And I'll go to Select Inverse. Hitting B to get my brush, I'll paint just inside that selection. And I'll deselect and save. Now that I have the shape I want on this layer, I want to delete where it falls off the perimeter of the actual plate. Holding down my Command key, I'll click on the thumbnail with the actual plate on it, and you'll see you get the marching ants that are the shape of the plate with the openings as well. I want to invert that because if I were to hit delete, I would lose what I did. I want to keep what's on the inside there. I'll go up to Select, Inverse, and I'll hit delete. And now those creases fall just on my license plate itself. I'm going to merge that down, and I'm going to go to Filter, and we're going to go to Filter Gallery. And we're going to use the plastic wrap filter. And you can see how it affects the surface. It gives it a bit of a sheen, and we can control that on the right-hand side in the attributes. So if I were to play with the strength of that, you can see it makes it darker or lighter. I think I'll make the highlight strength maybe 10, and then I might reduce the detail. I'll probably drop it to about 5 or 6, and I've kind of maxed out the smoothness on that. I'll make it maybe 10. So now we've got the creases in it, and we've got the effect we want. We want to go in and we want to kind of bend it around the perimeters, especially where the creases are, so that it looks a little bit older and kind of used. To do that, we're going to use the Puppet Warp tool. I'll go to Edit, Puppet Warp. Going around the perimeter of the plate, I'm going to click and drop points all the way around. I'm putting them close to where I want to bend the plate so it looks like this kind of works with the crease we've put in. And now I'll go a little bit further apart at this point, all the way around. And again, where this one is creased, I'll click and put 3 close ones there as well. And at the top of the crease here, 3 close pins. And then the same here at the top of this crease on the right. And once I've done that, I can now move these individually without affecting the whole surface of the license plate. No, I don't want it to be so square, so I'll go around where some of these points I've put in. I might just pull them a little to give it a little bit more of an irregular shape around the perimeter. And when I set that, I should have something like this. And we've completed our license plate tutorial.